across West Africa to every part of the world.
We're not just here for ourselves.
You know now, to end police brutality.
A new community and
not only to end SARS or SWAT, we use when they submit the ending strategy.
WADR 94.9 FM.
Monday to Sunday.
It's hard to explain, okay? But
all day, all year round.
It's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WADR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Bamako, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Welcome to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online on WADR.org. This is NEWSLINK, our comprehensive news package. Let's bring you our top stories. ECOWAS loses one more state to a military regime as the army topples Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum and suspends all institutions of the Seventh Republic.
We, the Defense and Security Forces, have decided to put an end to the regime you know. This follows the continuing deterioration in the security situation and poor economic and social governance.
The Burkinabe army denied reports of suspicious movements in barracks across the country as Niger sends shock waves. And in Nigeria, suspected terrorist attack can kill nearly 30 villagers in the northeast. Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us. A new dawn sets for Nigerians as the army takes over the helm of affairs after hours of failed negotiations between the mutineers and political actors within and outside Niamey. The situation across the country remains very fluid, with air and land borders closed and a curfew imposed until further notice. The new reality comes despite Wednesday's demonstrations by thousands of young protesters who took to the streets of the Nigerian capital denounced the coup. The purge was led by the head of the Presidential Guard, General Omar Chani, and his men, but it is unclear who is in charge of the presidency at the moment, even though sources hint that the former Chief of General Staff of the Army, General Salifu Modi, is being considered for the leadership. The new strongmen of Niamey, united within the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, CNSP, have justified their seizure of power. Colonel Major Amadou Abdrahman is a spokesman for CNSP.
We, the Defense and Security Forces, have decided to put an end to the regime you know. This follows the continuing deterioration in the security situation and poor economic and social governance. All the institutions of the Seventh Republic have been suspended. Land and air borders are closed until the situation stabilizes. A nationwide curfew is in place from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. until further notice.
The military has pledged to respect the physical and moral integrity of the deposed authorities and called on Nigeria's external parties not to interfere. The international community, including the United Nations, the European Union, African Union, France, and the United States, have all condemned the overthrow. We have remained in Nigeria as we are being joined by Mamman Sani Alu, a journalist who brings us details of the aftermath of the coup.
Yeah, well, since the media
statement, the media conference broadcasting in the state-owned television, national television, the declaration of the military officers who took over the power. Now everything is okay. Now, as soon as the workers are joining their offices, and also you will see the movement in the town, I can say that everything still now, the situation is under control.
Can you confirm the reports of demonstrations in certain locations in Niamey and other regions of Niger?
Yeah. Currently now, from the Dosso to Niamey and the certain areas also, regions of Niger also, there are some people who are organizing also a kind of a demonstration by supporting the military and the military action, who decided now to take the power.
Mr. Sani, this seems to be an unprecedented, or should I say an unexpected turn of events, because yesterday the demonstrators on the street were those who denounced or condemned the coup, but this morning you have those who are in support of the army. Are we expecting a divide?
Yeah, in this kind of issue, you cannot have division. As soon as, yesterday, it is the ruling party, the Youth League organization of the ruling party, PNDS Tarea. Now, after calling people now to come out in order to show or to support the president, the President Bazoum Mohamed, who was at this time in captivity. It is just to show that we are together because we are in the same political party. And today also, there are some civil society organization, trade unions also, in their part, they decided also to organize themselves just to support, to show that you, the military, you are together with you, and also we continue to support you.
Is there any news of ECOWAS team or AU team arriving in Niamey?
In Niamey, still now, we don't have the exact news regarding the arrival of any kind of a delegation, just to handle a kind of negotiation by demanding also the military to release the President Bazoum Mohamed. Still now, nothing. Because yesterday, the military, after their media statement, now they ask to close the airports, locations, and also the border.
That was Maman Sani Alu, a Nigerian journalist. Meanwhile, reports reaching us indicate that the national headquarters of the ruling party, that of former President Mohamed Bazoum, is under fire. The building came under attack shortly after a briefing by party officials who have denounced the overthrow. Meanwhile, the latest development in Niger has sent shockwaves to neighboring Burkina Faso as the armed force was late Wednesday forced to issue a statement. In a statement, the Chief of General Staff of the Burkinabe Army, Colonel Major Celestin Sempore, denied rumors of any such claims or suspicious military movements in barracks across the landlocked country. Matisi has more details in this report.
The rumors about the suspicious movements or activities in barracks across the country Wednesday came as the interim president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, arrived in Europe for the Russia-Africa summit. The Burkinabe army chief declared that the information widely circulated on social networks is false, saying the allegations were intended to manipulate public opinion. The army formation therefore called on all Burkinabe to support the fighting forces and to remain vigilant in the face of attempts at demoralization orchestrated by individuals with malicious intentions. He congratulated all the fighting forces for the many efforts made in the context of the reconquest of the national territory. Burkina Faso had experienced 2 coups in less than a year. The first was led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul Sandaogo Damiba against former President Roch Kabore in January 2022, and the second by Captain Ibrahim Traoré in September of the same year. Traore, like his predecessor, justified his actions on the nation's deteriorating security situation and the lost fight against terrorists. The Burkinabe interim president is in the meantime in St. Petersburg, northwestern Russia, where he is attending the second summit and the Economic and Humanitarian Forum, which opens today and ends tomorrow, July 28, 2023.
Matisi reporting there.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
The security and humanitarian issues in the Sahel were once again discussed by the United Nations Security Council. The region continues to be hit hard by terrorist attacks which have left thousands dead and millions displaced in less than 10 years. The head of the UN Office for West Africa called on the United Nations to support the region in a more concrete, realistic and long-term way to achieve lasting peace. More details with Tawfiq Abdel Nasser.
The president of the ECOWAS Commission began by describing a gloomy assessment of the security crisis in the Sahel. Addressing the members of the UN Security Council, Gambian Aliyu Toure said West Africa had recorded more than 1,800 terrorist attacks between January and June, resulting in almost 4,600 deaths. Burkina Faso remains the hardest hit country with more than 2,700 deaths, Mali with more than 800, and Niger and Nigeria with nearly 150. This situation is not without humanitarian consequences. The number of displaced persons continues to rise. The head of the ECOWAS Commission also pointed out that Benin and Togo, which have been less affected by terrorist attacks, are under threat from the spread of violent extremism on their soil. He concluded by indicating that the threat is spreading more and more throughout the region. For Leonard Santos Simao, head of the UN Office for West Africa, it is more important than ever for the United Nations to provide more concrete, realistic and long-term support to the region to achieve lasting peace. In his view, terrorist attacks in the Sahel have displaced more than 6 million people. He indicated that the number of people in need of food assistance will rise to 42 million by the end of next month if there is no adequate international response to the 30 million people already in need. The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Aliyu Toure, pointed out that coups, organized crime, and environmental crises are just some of the factors causing insecurity in West Africa that need to be tackled.
Tawfiq Abdel Nasser filed that report. In Nigeria, no fewer than 25 villages were killed by suspected terrorists during a raid on two separate communities in the northeastern state of Borno. The attack, one of many recent times, was confirmed by security sources and residents on Wednesday. Ogebierika completes the story.
The sources said the militants killed 18 herders grazing their livestock in one village and 7 other people in another village. Both villages are located in Kokawa, a district in Borno that also borders neighboring Chad. Although reported on Wednesday, the attack, according to a resident, occurred late Tuesday in a grazing area when fighters from Islamic West Africa province, ISWAP, arrived on more than 15 motorcycles. To avoid any military action, the insurgents beheaded 18 of the herders without firing a single bullet, the villager concluded. A local vigilante who helped bury the dead said about 18 of the corpses were recovered in the bush and they have been buried according to Islamic rites. Borno State in the northeast remains the hotbed of decade-long insurgency in Nigeria, which has spilled into neighboring Chad and Cameroon. The conflict was launched by Boko Haram and later joined by its offshoot ISWAP, resulting in more than 350,000 deaths and the displacement of millions now dependent on aid.
Ogebierika reporting. And just before the break, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo has called on the government of Liberia to invest more in the people and the economy. Speaking Wednesday during the country's 176th Independence Day celebration in Monrovia, President Akufo-Addo said the surest way of developing the country is to invest in the children and young people. WADR's Moravia correspondent Darlington Popper has more.
The Ghanaian leader used the media to challenge the Liberian authority to transform the structure of the economy by limiting the exportation of raw materials out of the country. He also called for a collaborative effort in combating terrorism and unconstitutional takeover of governments in the sub-region.
If there has to be a fight amongst you, that fight must be to work together, provide the Liberian people with a good quality of life. We must start, as you're doing, with investing in our children and young people as the surest way to guarantee a prosperous future. We must reiterate our commitment to democratic governance in the ECOWAS space and reject all unconstitutional changes of government.
For his part, meanwhile, Gambian President Adama Barrow, for his part, appealed to Liberians not to allow the elections to tear down the country, but work together to foster peace and reconciliation.
With peace and stability, we can sustainably exert our energies and use our resources to advance the cause of our people and our countries. Thus, the theme of your celebration, giving hope for a violence-free, fair, transparent, inclusive, and credible elections.
These world leaders are hoping Liberians can protect the peace of the country as they head to the October 10 presidential and legislative elections. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
You are listening to NEWSLINK here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. ECOWAS loses one more state to a military regime as the army topples Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum and suspends all institutions of the Seventh Republic. The Burkinabe army denies reports of suspicious movements in barracks across the country as Niger sends shockwaves. In Nigeria, suspected a terrorist attack and killed nearly 30 villagers in the northeast. Still ahead in the news, Ghana and Israel launch a business forum to strengthen trade relations between the two countries. And in the world of sport, Nigeria's Super Falcons defeat co-host Australia 3-2 in the FIFA Women's World Cup. Moments ago, we also have the guest interview and press review. Stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Remember, we are streaming live on wadr.org, live on YouTube, WADR News. Ghana and Israel have launched a business forum to strengthen trade relations between the two countries. This is the maiden edition of the forum, which seeks to strengthen the agricultural sector of both countries by leveraging modern technology. Climate change, which has shortened cropping seasons, disrupted growing season calendars, increased dry spells and droughts, continues to pose significant threat to food security in the West African sub-region. Israel, with similar arid and semi-arid climates, has become a leader in developing agro-tech solutions to farming in such environments, making it food secure and raking in millions of dollars in food exports. WADR's Accra correspondent Atwin Bilal Lawson tells us more.
The forum, which was facilitated by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, GIPC, under the theme Connecting Market, Driving Prosperity, is aimed at creating avenues for partnerships between Ghanaian and Israeli businesses. Speaking at the maiden forum, Eli Cohen, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel, says Ghana has the right mechanics to be food secured and a net exporter of food.
I heard the vision of Ghana president, and I think that thanks to the mutual cooperation, we are able to fulfill the vision. And one of the vision is regards to the food security. I don't think that Ghana should remain importer of food. Ghana should be exporter of food.
The Deputy Minister for Food and Agriculture, Yao Frimpong Addo, says the resolve of both countries to collaborate in new areas was indicative of the new height of their relationship.
The Israeli business community is to take full advantage of the conducive business environment and the political stability in Ghana and partner with their Ghanaian counterparts to invest in government's priority areas such as oil and gas, exploration, and the Planting for Food and Jobs program within the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Data from Ghana's Ministry of Finance shows Ghana's importation of foodstuff, including rice, poultry, sugar, and tomatoes, reached an average of $2 billion each year. Reporting for NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
Away from Ghana, we are back in Senegal, this time to talk about a study on the practice of journalism in the internet age. The study, supported by the University of Johannesburg, South Africa, and the Swedish Development Corporation, lasted 2 months. It was carried out by members of the Senegalese press and academics. Following the publication of the study, a panel discussion on the issue was organized by EGICOM, a journalism institute on Internet and Communication. And Mohamed Cho is a media practitioner.
I think it's a good thing to have such a study, focusing on how the arrival of the Internet changed the newsroom. Because it's very important today. We cannot talk about journalism without using the Internet. But, it's called from us as professionals of media to change the way we are doing, because most of us maybe have some Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram and things like that. But is it the same for the newsroom as a whole? This is the big question we should ask, and it's up to the bosses. For them to train all the newsroom, for them to adapt to this new revolution. It's a digital revolution, and if the newsroom as a whole does not adapt to the new way of doing journalism today with the internet, it's become clear that this newsroom is out of date and has to be updated.
And on the international scene, the Russia-Africa Summit is underway in the northwestern city of St. Petersburg, in Russia, Vladimir Putin's hometown. The two-day event, according to Kremlin, will be an opportunity for President Putin to build and deepen Moscow's support in Africa. This agenda has, however, been questioned, especially as his international stature is presumably weakened by his continued invasion of Ukraine. For African leaders, it could be a time to reinforce their unity and speak with one voice. Several African leaders are expected at the summit, which takes place which opens today. Again, Moscow said that 49 out of 54 African countries have confirmed their participation at the summit.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Today's edition of the press review takes us back to Accra, where we join Atiwi Mbila Lawson.
Let's start the review by looking at the headlines in the Daily Graphic newspaper. The screaming headline, 50,000 babies die annually according to the Ghana Health Service of birth asphyxia. Unfortunate news there. Then we have some banner headlines. Black flies invade Land Kwantanang Dawinya. There's another banner headline. Submit report today. Deputy Minister directs Adisco management. So those are the headlines in the Daily Graphic newspaper. From the Daily Graphic, let's go to the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Another screaming headline about newborn babies. This time round, it's about the childhood immunization program. The screaming headline says newborns to receive hepatitis B vaccines within 24 hours of birth beginning next year. Then we have some banner headlines. This one, government invests $154 million in 13 African Games facilities. And Kennedy Japan picks first position for August 26 NPP special delegates voting. Let's bring you some other stories. Let's look at business. The Business Finder newspaper, the screaming headline, 7,500 jobs to be available from 2 community mining schemes. And then Israel, Ghana must raise levels of investment. And that's a story brought to you this morning on NewsLink. And the final headline, this is a banner headline, SEHP to hold Maiden Africa Women and Children's Confab. Interesting story there. So those are the headlines in the Business Finder newspaper. Let's now go to the Daily Post newspaper. The screaming headline, "It's hypocrisy. If I did 1/10 of MPP's mess, they would have crucified me," according to former President John Mahama. Another Akufo-Addo girl robbed of $114,500 US, £800 and 50,000 Ghana cedis from a trunk at her home. Then another banner headline, "Stop using Judicial Council to harass and victimize Domahine." That's what the NDC is telling President Akufo-Addo. And the final headline here, NPP government suspends 5 trillion cedi on job Ibrahim Mahama was doing for Ghana free of charge. We will wrap up by bringing you some showbiz news. The graphic showbiz, the screaming headline, "Film policy should not cripple the industry." And this is a banner headline, "6 strange things a kiss does to your body." Then another banner headline, "Help clamp down on pirated content," according to Ivan Kwashiga. And that's how we end the newspaper review for today. My name is Atiyewin Imbila Lawson. Back to you in the studio.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest this afternoon on NewsLink is Gad Shamaki Peters, a regional security and governance expert. Peters, in this brief chat, remarks about the negative impact, that is, of the backsliding of democracy in the ECOWAS sub-region. As of today, Niger becomes the 4th country to join the list of countries, namely Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, to be ruled by decree. A worrying trend that portends a lot of crises, from poor economic decisions to right abuses and suppression of civic spaces. While regional experts await ECOWAS's action, which most likely will begin with sanctions, the threat that the coup in Niger poses regional security is massive. Gad Peters responds first to the question of what is at stake. Take a listen.
I think it's another unfortunate situation happening within the region. We're yet to manage the Sudan crisis, and you can see the proximity between Sudan and Niger. And you're very much aware that Niger has been an unstable nation for quite a while. When you talk about Niger, Chad, Sudan, and all of these, and several other countries within the Sahel, you realize that this is not a good development. And so the statement by Colonel Amadou and his team saying that they've taken over power yesterday or early hours of today is quite a worrisome development, because I remember when President Tinubu took over the leadership of the ECOWAS, he made it clear that coup have no place in Africa, and he says it could be quite unprofessional for soldiers to want to take over democratic structure. And so I'm interested in seeing how he's going to manage the situation. I'm interested in seeing how they will ensure that Niger do not degenerate into faction of various warlords or armed groups. I'm interested in seeing how they will return democracy back to Niger in whatever form. So I think this is another trying moment for the sub-region and for Africa as a whole. And we need to look at this issue, looking at Burkina Faso, looking at Mali, and all of these other places where gradually military are taking over. And we must equally look and be worried about the influence of the Wadr group around the Africa and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the interests of Russia, interests of China, the United States of America.
By your assessment, there seems to be a bit of what you will say is the influence of shadow partners in all of this operation, or supposedly military takeovers.
Yes, very well, very well. If you look at the Sudan issue, you can't do away with the shadow parties and shadow influence. Again, we're suspecting that to be happening in Niger. Although we are not in the era of the Cold War, but again, this is a replication of what used to happen there, that either socialists, capitalists, or right-wing or left-wing people just use one African force or the other to take over power. So clearly, there's so much external influence to what's happening in Niger.
That was Gad Shamaki Peters, a regional security and governance expert. And in the world of sport, Nigeria's Super Falcons have beaten co-host Australia 3-2 in the FIFA Women's World Cup. Nigeria came from behind to beat Matildas and end their first victory of the tournament. The Super Falcons became are now the only African team to register a win in the tournament so far. A draw against Ireland will earn them a place in the round of 16. And that's it on Sports News. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to our partner radios transmitting this news broadcast. Iyaz Bilimu has been on the console and Mustafa Sek streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Do interact with us via social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
News, talk, music, get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy